And this is the 4th day of March, isn't it?
Yeah.
4th day of March in 1965. And on this tape for the Living Legend Library at Oklahoma Christian College and for their library, we're in the offices of Mr. Harrison Levy, 709 Mercantile Building, the corner of Main and Hudson in downtown Oklahoma City. And Mr. Levy, as we have done with practically all of the people with whom we are talking, find out where they're from and how they came here and why they came here and so forth, so we can build another segment in the history of Oklahoma City. What was your origin, sir, before Oklahoma City?
We lived in Italy, Texas. Mm-hmm. My father had a store there. Mm-hmm. And we moved to Oklahoma City in January 1906 when I was 5 years old. Mm-hmm. And we lived on 11th Street, just east of Walker.
Mm-hmm. What'd your father do then? He opened a store or what?
He went in the real estate. He and his brother went in the real estate business, the name of Levy Brothers. Mm-hmm. Business has been going ever since.
Sort of handed down from your father, and you started in it, but of course, you got your schooling here, didn't
you? Yes.
What grade school?
Went to McKinley Grade School, mm-hmm. and went to Central High School. Mm-hmm. And then I went to Exeter Academy, and then I graduated from Yale in 1923.
Came back here, did you?
No, didn't come back here. Then family moved to New York City. Father had office here and New York City. Mm-hmm. And I was on the Curb Exchange there from 1925 to 1940. January 1941, moved back to Oklahoma City.
Well, during the course of your father's activity in establishing a business here, real estate, well, naturally, he saw many, many things develop in the city, didn't he?
Oh, yes.
He had a part in.
Well, Oklahoma City didn't go very far back in 1906.
No.
And in those days, it was growing, and there was a lot of property we have now, they bought around 1907 or 1908, mm-hmm. and some of the property we still have, including the property where this building is.
How long has this building been here? It's quite old.
Originally built in 1910, 5 stories. In 1926, added 3 more. Mm-hmm. It's a fireproof, concrete steel building, mm-hmm. and just as well built as any building built today.
And your father built it, huh?
That's right.
Any other buildings that we could pinpoint that he built in the town?
Well, there are no other buildings of which we're proud of, we might say. Mm-hmm. Still have a building down on Reno, mm-hmm. but it's just about getting ready to be torn down.
Mm-hmm. What did you do when you came back from New York?
I went in the real estate business.
Came in with
well, it wasn't. The firm was not very active except in managing its own properties, and I gradually went into the brokerage business, and I built up a brokerage business under my own name. We operate here under 2 names. We manage the old property on the name of Levy Brothers, mm-hmm. but I run my own business under Harrison Levy Company.
Well, you've been pretty busy, haven't you?
Well, we just keep moving.
Keep moving all the time.
Yeah, that's all. And one time in connection with this, I even had a restaurant over here called a Snack Bar, which I ran for a long time. We had a room we couldn't rent, so I put the restaurant in there and did all right.
Did all right with it. Been a lot of things happen around this town that you've witnessed, haven't you?
Oh yes, a lot of interesting things happen, especially when I remember a lot of things. My father was very active in those days. He used to be on all the things that, see, when they brought the packing town in here, the stockyards in here, he worked on that. He was very hard worker on that. Very hard worker in bringing the Capitol here. And especially, see, this building was the first legislative capital of Oklahoma, in Oklahoma City. When the Capitol was moved from Guthrie here, as when Haskell moved it down here, he called my father in. He said he wanted to rent the building. It was a new building then. It was only about less than 50% occupied, just been finished around 1911 or somewhere, whenever they came down here. And this became the first capital as far as the legislature. They had all the whole, they took the entire building.
The Mercantile Building.
That's right. The only trouble is that they took it and used it, but they didn't appropriate any money to pay any rent. So it was, I think, about 3 years before they collect any rent. And in the meantime, they had interest and taxes and expenses to pay on the building, and no income from it. And I remember those were real tough days. And it was quite a job getting it through legislature. And it took a lot of bottles of I.W. Harper, I think, to get it through before they ever got the rent. And see, then when the Capitol was moved here, then a lot of the other cities in the state, especially Guthrie, asked for a referendum whether they should move it away from Oklahoma City or where it should be. Then they had an election, another election. That was in 1913, I think. And Oklahoma City won that election. And if Oklahoma City had lost the election, they probably never would have collected the rent. Because you can't make a state pay very well if they don't want to.
That's a little difficult, isn't it?
You couldn't get them out, you couldn't do anything.
They had nowhere else to go either, did they?
No, but they didn't care. But the main thing is that just try running an office building for 3 years without any rent and see how it's funny now, but it wasn't very funny then, because I remember.
I should imagine.
I remember all that was real rough. Real rough. And as a matter of fact, the father was one that worked very hard on getting this election won. He worked all over the state and everything else. And I remember he worked one of the hardest workers for it. And after the election, that's why I knew you were coming down today, so I brought this. Here's a pen that the governor signed the bill that made Oklahoma City the capital in the election of 1913. Now, the capital was already here, but this was a referendum.
That made it official.
It made it official, I guess.
This is
and that, now I don't know if that is the only pen. It probably isn't the only pen, but it is a pen in which he signed that bill. The governor gave it to my father because he told him he worked harder on it than anyone else.
Isn't that wonderful? That's a great memento to have, isn't it? A fine piece of history.
Yeah. Now, also over at Gilbert Hill at the Oklahoma.
Yes.
I has a contract I gave him, and he hasn't returned it yet. The contract is for a group of people here put up $21,000 to buy this land where the Capitol is and around it. And when and if the Capitol came here and they accepted that location, they were to accept that land. If the Capitol didn't go there, then the people who put the money up were to get their money back. So I had a copy of that contract, and I gave it to Gilbert Hill, and he has it right now. And I noticed that Levy Brothers gave $5,000 towards the buying of that land. It was quite a bit of land up there. I don't know how much, but all that land was given to the state when they made Oklahoma City the capital and placed it up at 23rd Street. Because at that time there were lots of arguments where that capital should go, even if it did come to Oklahoma City.
I can imagine.
I noticed somebody even built a building in Putnam City where they were going to put them, and there was some wanted it downtown, some wanted it all different places. But it seemed like the 23rd Street district got it. And probably this land that was bought had something to do with that. Certainly had. If they hadn't bought the land, it probably would have gone somewhere else.
Yeah.
Maybe not, maybe in Oklahoma City, but not in that same location. Now, those are old things I remember.
Somebody had a great deal of foresight on that, didn't they?
Oh, yeah, well, that's right. Well, the main thing about this foresight, you had to believe in the town. And I could see that since I was a boy. Oklahoma City has been made by men. The location didn't make it. It wasn't anything here that wasn't at Guthrie or at Norman or Purcell or any place else. It just happened to be that they had the right men here in Oklahoma City and made it.
As a matter of fact, the topography was could even work against it, couldn't it?
Well,
and the location.
It wasn't. It's just out here on the prairie, and so it's and they had the right men. And this one fellow went and got the Frisco Railroad to come in here. That was, I think, before we moved here, I believe. But I think this man C.G. Jones or something like that, he's the one that got the Frisco Railroad to come here instead of going to Guthrie. If the Frisco Railroad had come into Guthrie, why, it might have made a lot of difference.
We'd have been sitting in Guthrie right now, probably.
Well, probably so. So it's that's all. But that's all. You've seen a lot happen in a town like this. Town that people that believed in the town never believed it would come anything like this. Be size like this, halfway to El Reno. But got some lots now that were 12 miles out. You know, there was a big boom here in Oklahoma around 1910. They sold lots all over the country. I know all about that. Sold them all the way Indiana and Ohio and everywhere else. These 25-foot lots. And there's a lot of them still around that people can't get the titles clear right now. And after a while, these people got tired of keeping these lots, and they were sold for taxes. And that's why there's so many tax title lots all around Oklahoma City. Certain districts, they're still tied up there, like north of the bypass on east of the Santa Fe Railroad there. They're just full of 25-foot lots.
And actually, what good is a 25-foot lot?
Well, you just got to get enough of them, and you can get enough of them when they're all sold for taxes, but it takes a lot of legal work to get a clear title. But once they're worth something, it's all right. But you carry them forever. Some of these lots, we've got some lots around here that we've had since 1920, bought for taxes. I know the first real estate deal that I ever made, I was going to college, and back in those days, you didn't have to have a license to be a broker. All you had to do was just get out and work. And I was wanting to work one summer, so my father said, well, go out and sell these lots. And all we had was tax titles. And some of these lots, he said, well, here, sell these lots. He said, you can have them for $10 a lot. And so I was selling them for $25. And tell you where these lots were and are between 30th and 36th Street and Pennsylvania and the Villa. Was the West Point edition. I don't know what those lots are worth today, but in those days they weren't worth very much.
25 at tops, huh?
Oh, yeah, I was trying to sell them for 25. I didn't sell very many.
Mhm.
and all those kind of lots, but those especially, that's right near just north of Sears Roebuck there.
Right. Mhm.
And there's a lot of that stuff around town that went that way. But Oklahoma City just keep on growing, and it probably will keep on growing as long as any of us live.
Mhm.
And maybe someday they'll fix up the downtown, we hope.
Well, that seems to be the next order of business, really.
Well, the trouble is in here, it's been lost by neglect of certain people. I would say the city council been overtaxed, terribly overtaxed, and we've been and nobody that paid much attention, including the banks and so forth, haven't seemed to have shown very much interest in the center of the retail center of downtown, and let it go to pot. And now all of a sudden they get a plan that's going to cost $100 million or something like that, and they want to tear everything down. Well, that seems a little extreme. There's a lot of good things. I don't see any necessity of tearing a building like this down, or a building like Kerr's, a building like the Hales building, or other buildings that are of the right quality. I think that the new improvements can be made without tearing these kind of buildings down. There's plenty of junk around here to tear down without tearing down stuff that was made to last and as good as anything that can be built today.
Well, some of these buildings are pretty solid.
Oh, well, it's solid. Quite a job to tear it down. But that's the way these things go. They let it get so terribly bad that they just want to scrap the whole thing and move away, I guess. But they will do something. But I hope they don't do anything wrong just to make a pretty picture, because it's very true. If you make all this retail district 100% beautiful and all that, it makes a very good picture. But I think that there's other things they can do with that money to better advantage than tearing down fine concrete and steel buildings that could be made to fit into the situation.
Well, there's been a lot done on some of the older buildings here and elsewhere to beautify the facade so that they would fit into a scheme of some sort.
That's right. It could be done. For instance, on the plan, they plan to tear this building down along with a lot of other concrete and steel buildings like the Commerce Exchange and the Hales building, Globe Life building, good fireproof buildings. But I think, for example, as far as I know, none of the men that drew up these plans of what they're going to tear down have ever been in this building. They've walked by and looked at the outside, but as far as I've been able to learn, they have never even come inside to see how it was built. And I think they're too much interested in making a beautiful picture rather than being a little more practical with what's going to go. We've been fighting for years to have some sort of urban renewal. Been fighting for years to try to get some fair taxes, and you keep fighting these things, and we've tried to get the Chamber of Commerce for 12, 15 years to do something about downtown, and couldn't get them to move, and now all of a sudden they want to tear it down. I mean, it's 5 years ago we couldn't even get them to talk to us. Now they want to tear it down. Go to one extreme to the other. So that's where we are today.
Well, historically, a downtown will always be.
Well, that's the easy thing to say, but a downtown won't be here unless you make it.
That's right.
And whereas as an individual, I or other individuals cannot provide the parking that was the real cause of our downfall here. Other things came in, but $1 million spent on parking would have saved $100 million to be spent. But it's just like a sore that's allowed to go, and the first thing you know, you have to cut off the arm. And that's what's happened here. The city council went over and talked to the city council, and they said they weren't interested at all. The downtown take care of themselves, that's all they said. And nobody else was going to do anything. But now everybody in town wants to see the downtown protected. But you couldn't get any of them to talk to us or even listen. And that's the whole thing. Other towns have been saved, including Tulsa. We tried to get a location for a client in downtown Tulsa. Tried to get a location for a drugstore, a chain drugstore. We made a lease to them here in Oklahoma City, and they wanted one in Tulsa. Went over to Tulsa, and we couldn't find a location in what is known as a 100% district. In Oklahoma City, in what's known as a 100% district, I can give them a dozen. And Tulsa has done something. We haven't. And Dallas has done something. All these other towns have done something. But Oklahoma City, the people who might have done something haven't cared for it. Maybe it's the wrong people, had the wrong property, I don't know. But Oklahoma City was made by men, and it can be ruined by men too, just like it was made. I hope the urban renewal will save it. But the downtown had no reason to get in the condition it's in. But there it is, just the same.
You have to face the facts of life.
You have to face them. And now, all of a sudden, why, they bring in a fancy surgeon, and he wants to cut the head and head and the feet and everything off. And but if that's going to do the job, all right. But we've had this property here a long time, and frankly, we don't want it torn down. We don't see any need for it to be torn down. We think that property like this, it's worth over $1 million, should not be torn down, should be used. A building like Kerr's building should be used. Other buildings like that could be fitted into the picture just as well as not. But some of these people that bought these buildings recently on speculation, they don't care. Well, we do care. We don't want to lose the building. We want to keep it. Been in our family. I know my father sweated pretty hard to keep the building and build the building. And as long as I'm here, I'm not going to let them tear it down without a fight. So that's the story there, as far as I know. Now, if you have any questions and want to ask me about anything, I'll be very glad to tell you anything I know without giving you my political opinions.
Well, that isn't necessary. As I mentioned, the whole idea was just a nice, free and easy conversation about your reactions and some of the...
Well, I will say one thing.
Some of the incidents.
As I say, I grew up here and went to school here. And there's a lot of talk now about raising the teachers' salaries and the condition of the schools here in town. Well, that's nothing new in Oklahoma City. Probably in the whole state, maybe, I don't know, but at least Oklahoma City. The schools in Oklahoma City have always been inferior. To my knowledge, they were when I went to school, and to best of my knowledge, they still are. And one of the reasons, I think, is because people do not pay enough taxes. There's too much depending on the state. And the state has homestead exemption, which means that lots of these counties in the state, nobody pays any taxes. And it's a politician's dream that nobody is supposed to pay taxes, only the railroads and the utility companies, because they got a $1,000 exemption. And I understand there's 5 counties in the state where no one who lives in his own house has a house worth over $1,000 as far as the tax assessor is concerned, because he wants to get reelected. And it's a very bad system. And I know when I went here to back in those days, to go to a college in the East, if you wanted to go to a college in the East like Yale, you had to use a lot of ingenuity to do it, because they discouraged it then because they didn't prepare you for it. They prepared you for maybe local schools, but they didn't teach more than, at those days, maybe 2/3 of what was necessary to get in. And even today, to go to schools from the bigger universities outside the state, it's very difficult for the graduates from the high schools in the state of Oklahoma to go to schools that are very choosy in their qualifications. And the schools need improvement, and I'm not worried about whether teachers get enough to live on so much as the fact that we're getting the kind of education that we're paying for. And maybe the worst thing that can happen is that the teachers aren't worth any more than they get. That's the kind of teachers we might get. But that isn't true, because we get some very fine teachers. We've got some good teachers here that certainly aren't being paid enough. And just staying here on account of family ties when they can go to New Mexico or Texas or someplace else and make at least $1,000 a year more. I don't blame them for going. I would too. But things, of course, education has changed. Back in those days, when I wanted to go to Yale, and in those days you had to take college board examinations just the same as you do today. So it was quite a job taking them and finding out how to take them. So I wrote the college board people, and I told them I wanted to take them in Oklahoma. And they wrote me back and said they were sorry that I would have to go to Dallas to take them, because I was the only person in the state that was taking college board exams that year. Only person in the whole state. So that was the condition of education in those days. And whereas it's not good now, it certainly is a lot better than it was then. Because the schools, whenever I wanted to go and I talked to the teachers and the principal of the schools and all that, all they did was discourage me from going to the East, because as far as they were concerned, why, Oklahoma University was the only place there was to go. And that was all right. It's a very good school, but I didn't want to go. And I read too many Frank Merrill books. I wanted to go to Yale. So that was it. But I've seen Oklahoma City grow, and I've seen some things. Oklahoma City is a fine city, and it has a lot of fine points. And I think there is probably less wrong with Oklahoma City than any other city I know. Otherwise, I wouldn't be living here. But it certainly isn't perfect. But I don't want to move anywhere else. I'd like to help make it better if I could. And I'm all in favor of this urban renewal. And if they have to do the whole thing, that's all right. But I also have to protect the interest of my family as far as we're concerned, because we don't want some appraiser come along and tell me what this building is worth, because I'm an appraiser myself, and I've done too much business with appraisers, and I can bring in 5 appraisers and get values that are 100% apart. And most unfortunately, too many appraisers are appraising for they appraise a price that that fits the person who hires them. And it's very difficult to appraise a piece of property on downtown Oklahoma City today when the tax assessor and the city council and everyone else has done everything to ruin the value. Then if they come along and appraise the value of this property or other properties on Main Street, after they've ruined it, if they appraise it at what it's earning today, it becomes very unfair, because the very people who want to condemn it are the ones who have, in my opinion, ruined it. So it's if they're going to condemn this property and appraise it, it should be appraised on its value over a period of time, not after they've got us sick and grasping for breath, you know, because now it's no time to appraise that building over there that Martin's had leased to J.C. Penney. They had a building over there that was leased to Penny for 30 years, and they used to get a good $100,000 a year rent out of it. And now to come along and say, well, it's not worth anything because it's empty, that's not very fair either. So it's going to be very difficult to be fair and do it. Now, they're going to spend $100 million, more or less, they're talking about. It would be a good idea if they found a way to be fair, at least, and protect the people's interest, because this was and has been for many years the cream of Oklahoma City real estate. Right down here on Main Street, it isn't anymore, but it could be again, and it will be if the right people do it. And if we have enough parking, meet the parking demand, which I hope they will. Just having parking isn't enough. The parking has got to be very cheap, and it's got to be convenient.
That's right.
And if you have it convenient and not cheap, that isn't enough. And if you have it cheap and not convenient, that isn't enough. You got to have both. And I don't know of any other way to get it that way except by somebody paying part of it. Because people are not going to drive by a big shopping center that has just as many stores as they have downtown, where they can park free and come down here and pay 85 cents to $1 to park. They're just not going to do it. And your wife won't do it, and my wife won't do it.
Right.
So that's all. You've got to meet it, and they're not going to do it if they have to park 8 blocks away and take a shuttle bus either. You've got to have your parking where it belongs, and it's got to be very reasonable, at least not more than 25 cents.
Well, the public is very funny, and they're very demanding, aren't they?
Well, you've got to meet competition.
That's right.
No matter what you're selling or what you're doing, you always have meet competition. I don't care. In your whole life, you got to meet competition, and we're used to that. A lot of people think they can get by without competition. You can't get by anything without competition. So if we're going to have the people come down here, you're going to have to make it easy for them, and to make it attractive when they get here. And right now, we don't have either. There is very little reason for a retail business to come downtown at the present time. And it's very difficult for an office building to operate downtown when they zone property everywhere else in town. Anybody can go out and build a big building and get lots of parking all over Classen Boulevard and where have you, where the taxes are much cheaper and the rents are higher. It's quite amazing. You take for example these buildings up here on Classen Boulevard, where they give supposedly free parking and have everything. You will find that the land that they use for parking is still assessed at the old 10-cent values. For example, these buildings like where the Cameron building is, and the Classen Terrace building, all that parking, the taxes are last time I looked them up a couple of years ago, on these 50-foot lots, they've been selling for $25,000, $30,000 a piece. The taxes are $49 a year. Well, lots down here on Grand Avenue or Sheridan that sell for the same kind of money are taxed at about $1,000 a year. Well, they give you all kinds of reasons for it, but those are the actual facts. So we can't go out and give that free parking because of the tax situation. If we had to pay $49 a year taxes, we could do it too. But they get special favors for some reason, and no one changes the tax rate to fit the situation, and they allow buildings that are worth, that mean lots that are worth $25,000 and $30,000 to be taxed as though they're worth $1,000, and we are back to the old competition again. You can't compete with somebody who's on a different scale than you are. You can't compete with anybody who is taxed 10% or 5% at the same rate you're taxed, and that'll lick you. That just lick you just as fast as it can be.
Well, it just doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up, but there it is. There it is, and they keep talking. They wonder why downtown, and they blame it on out-of-town ownership, and they blame it on this, and they blame it on everybody. But you can find a lot of it right in the tax. In the high unfair tax situation, there's a lot. And also you can find a lot of it in the fact of the city or the city council or whoever could have provided some park. We've got a lot of junk land down here that could have been turned into parking a long time ago. Now they come in to save it, but the patient's damn near dead.
What could be done? Anything be done to change the tax structure?
Well, I don't know how they change the tax structure because that's begins to be politics, and everybody says, but the tax assessor says you can't base it on income, you base it on values. Well, just to my understanding of real estate, values are depending on income. In other words, if you don't get a value of, if you don't get an income, you have the value. Now, I'll show you something here. You might be interested. Look out the window. You look out the window, you'll see a sign, that red paint on there says elect Barry and
yes.
And who was it? I've forgotten who ran with him.
Yeah, that was Goldwater and
Miller.
Miller.
Yeah,
Barry
and who was? I've forgotten. But there. Oh no, I don't know. Barry and Bud.
Barry and Bud. Yeah.
Barry and Bud. Well, that sign, for example, room was given to them for use in the campaign. That same sign was put up originally 4 years ago. That sign had on it, vote for Nixon and Lodge. And it had been vacant. The building was actually another sign for that. The building has been vacant for over 6 years. It's gone through ever since Oklahoma went, before Oklahoma went wet. Because that's the one Byron Gambulis used to have. He used to have a drugstore there, and he quit there about a year before, went out and started a liquor store. And he does more business in one day now than he could do down there in a year. But now that all the time, the owners of that property will rent it to you or anybody else for just about enough to cover taxes. And it's been vacant for 6 years. And you go over and try to get your taxes reduced. All you do is get a little laugh, get a horse laugh. They reduce them 10%. Those properties used to bring $1,000 a month rent. Now you can't get $200 a month rent. 10% doesn't do you any good. And so these owners are what can they do? They can't afford to go ahead and do everything with them. And with that situation there, and 3 years from now, in 1968, there'll be a sign on there: vote for
Somebody.
Rockefeller and somebody, or
Who knows?
who knows, whoever it will be, and probably another Republican, and it'll play the same old sign in the same place. It'll probably still be there, and it's already been there 6 years. So when you get a vacant room, the fellow says, "Oh, they're unreasonable and all that." Heck, I got a vacant room down here. Nobody comes up and asks me about it. Doesn't matter. I got some. This downtown, and the downtown tax situation that hurt me as much as the family I manage it. I'm only a part owner here. I'm not. I have brothers and sisters. I'm 25% owner. Well, but I haven't been in the real estate business. I haven't been asleep all the time. I saw about 15 years ago that I learned my lesson that if you want to make any money, you had to get out of downtown. But I wasn't running this property then until my uncle died about 4 or 5 years ago. And so I bought property out. I was trying to rent a room here on Main Street one time, and I couldn't find a tenant for it some months. And while I was trying to rent this room on Main Street, this was over 10 years ago, I made 9 leases out around 23rd and Walker while I was trying to rent one on Main Street. So my father and I told him, I said, if you can pay your taxes with 3 or 4 months rent, there you go. You're lucky. And for a while, there wasn't anything selling down here because the people that owned it weren't pretty strong, and they didn't have to sell. But all of a sudden, somebody came along and he had to sell. And then the prices just dropped to pieces. And now they're selling for about 30 to 40% of what they used to sell for when they sell. When you can sell them, you can't sell them at all.
Mm-hmm. What do you think will happen to this Halliburton building?
Oh, I think they're figuring on tearing that down with the urban renewal. Nobody's going to contest that. The city is already, it belongs to a city trust.
Yes.
So they're planning to tear it down. Now, I don't know why the city offices and the county offices couldn't have used it for their expansion. I don't know why they have to go out and get a several $1 million bond issue when they could have fixed that building over and used it, but they didn't want it that way. So maybe they're right. Maybe it's better because naturally if they want it right together. They didn't want to walk across the street.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's their idea, and that's what they're going to do. And now that the urban renewal has come in, they're not planning to do anything else but tear it down. That's all there is to it. Mm-hmm. So that's all right. There isn't anybody to contest that. Mm-hmm. And they're going to tear down a lot of stuff around. And they may tear this building down. I can't stop them. But I don't want them to. And there's nobody that's yelled louder or worked harder, frankly, for urban renewal than I have. But I still don't want them to tear this building down because I don't think it's necessary. I think this isn't the only one. Hale's building, for example, that's supposed to be torn down too, one of their things. Well, they just spent $500,000 remodeling that building. It's one of the most modern buildings in town. They've got winter, summer air conditioning, which the First National Bank doesn't have, the Liberty Bank building doesn't have, certainly the Cravens building doesn't have. Hale's building is a far superior building to the Cravens building. But it fits the situation. So they're going to tear the Commerce Exchange building down. I don't know why, but they're going to tear it down. Well, the people that own the Commerce Exchange building, they're recent investors. They bought the property at distressed prices. And if it's condemned at the kind of prices they pay, they don't care. But we've had this property through thick and thin. We've had it through good years and through bad years. And we don't want to sell it. And certainly we don't want to sell it on bad years because good years will come again.
Sure.
And we ride them through. When you have a piece of property like this we've had the land here in the family almost 60 years.
Your occupancy is good, isn't it?
Well, we've got plenty of vacancies. We're still running at a profit, but we certainly, it's hard. And it's very difficult, and especially to pay the unreasonably high taxes are a great burden. Even though they've been cut 10% here and 10% there, your income has been cut 50%. So when you cut that, you know, and it's hard to compete with the new buildings that have something. They aren't any better built. In fact, most of them aren't as well built. None of them have the marble or other things that go with the other. None of them have it as strongly built or as fireproof built, actually. But they're all glass and aluminum, and they shine, but actually no better built, and they won't last as long. So that's just the way the building is today. But we have to compete with the people that have things going their way. Someday the downtown will come back, and then we'll all be a lot better off. And the whole town will be better off. We hope.
Well, it's difficult to picture a metropolitan area without a central core.
Well, they let it go. They bled the the downtown so long, everybody just took a pick at it, you know. Everybody downtown was supposed to be a millionaire, you know, and so the politicians down the south part of town, the north part of town, the east part of town, they said, well, those big bankers down there, worry about them. So everybody took a pick, and now downtown's sick. Now, first place, when I say downtown, don't get things confused. But I mean, when I'm talking about downtown, I mean Main Street South. From First Street North hasn't been hurt. First Street North is as good as it ever was. Land up there is selling for as much or more than it ever has. It's the retail part of downtown that's been hurt. And then they let the districts like Reno and California, the beer halls, ruin it. You take like the old Rotten Apple, and you take, for example, nobody would go down, nobody would park a car down on California or Reno, and he and his wife take and walk up to Main Street. They won't do it. You won't do it. You won't do it tonight. You wouldn't come down, park your car on California and walk up to Main Street.
That's right.
And so I don't believe it was necessary to let that part of town get as terrible as it has, and it's poisoned the whole town. And the closer you to it, the worse you're poisoned. And people are scared to walk out of the Sheraton Hotel at night. And that's all there is to it. I dare some of these city councilmen or whatever to take their wife and walk down Reno from Walker to Broadway on Saturday night, or maybe any other night. Just dare them to.
Take quite a chance.
Take quite a chance, because they will be pushed around or insulted at least once on the trip down. So that's about it. It's this part of town has been neglected, and it's still being neglected regardless of all the urban renewal. Still nothing has been done yet. The urban renewal, the threat of urban renewal, or the planning of urban renewal, has actually made the downtown situation temporarily worse than it's ever been, because no one will rent a room on Main Street today. No one, because you can't promise anything. And no tenant will spend a nickel to remodel, because they say the building's going to be torn down, and it may not be for 10 years. But there it is. So we're paralyzed right now. The situation down here is pitiful. It's a shame at a time when Oklahoma City is actually booming. You see, in other words, these deals they made with General Electric and Western Electric and Tinker Field and all those things of which we've all contributed, and the downtown people probably more than anybody, actually every time one of those places go in, the downtown has been hurt because it just takes more people away from downtown. Doesn't bring them here. Tinker Field doesn't bring anybody to Oklahoma City, downtown Oklahoma City anymore. Neither is Western Electric. People out working out of Western Electric don't even know where downtown is. You tell them where Main and Hudson is, they don't know where it is. They've been here 3 or 4 years. Tell them, ask them where the Mercantile Building, I'd tell them, Main and Hudson. Well, where is Hudson? That's a fact. Where is Hudson? And they've been here for years. They work out at Western Electric or something. They have never been downtown. Frankly, they don't need to come downtown. And but I think people are beginning to realize that you have to have something downtown, and gradually we'll have it, and they'll probably go to extreme. They let it get so terrible, maybe now we'll have something really beautiful. And if they tear this building down, why, maybe they'll put up something here that's better. But I'd sure hate to see them tear it down and put up something that wasn't better. And I'm not sure that will be any better. Certainly the plans I've seen, the improvements here will not be any better than this building or Kerr's or that. It won't be any better. Just different.
Different design.
That's all, but no better. Now they can be fitted. What we've got that's good could be saved. But I don't know whether they will or not. I doubt if they will. But you can't tell. Nobody knows. I don't know. I've been talking to you a long time.
Well,
you probably know everything I know, except you didn't hear much about the history, but you heard a lot about taxes.
Well, that's all part of it because it's an integral part of the activity.
Yeah.
Without getting into any personal politics or anything of the sort, you think our present form of city government is functional?
Yes, I think it's the best we can have. And I think that at the present time we have the nucleus of the best council we've had to my knowledge. And I hope that after the next election we'll have the whole thing set up in a way, because we want to get all our courts and our governments and all that in such a way that no one is going to get a fair or an unfair deal. And unfortunately that has never been the case. And there was always certain lawyers who could get zoning. There was always certain lawyers who get things, who were always the right man to get in courts. And I think it would be wonderful if Oklahoma City, the whole state of Oklahoma, would get so that we would have honest, fair government. And I think it's pretty evident that we have. Now all this talk about these justices being up, I can't see where it should have been such a surprise. I've been hearing these rumors for years. I've been hearing these things for years. It's been common knowledge that there are certain lawyers that were, at the time of election of these judges, were out collecting money from the corporation for these judges to run. Now, when they come around to the gas company and ask for a big contribution for such and such a judge or such and such a corporation commissioner, or come around to you or me or anybody else and asking for these contributions, and the fellow doesn't want to give them, but he doesn't dare not give them. And you know that someday that the person who gives the contributions is liable to get better treatment in the court than the one who doesn't give the contribution. And you will find that what's known as practical businessmen will give contributions to somebody whom they really don't care much for. And we'll have to find that judges, and as long as you have judges elected, you're going to have. As long as you have county assessors elected, you're going to have county assessors who will favor the masses over the people, like the First National Bank building. In other words, nobody enjoy more than picking on the First National Bank building. They all like to do that,
sure,
because there's only one.
Yeah.
There's only one of them, and when they go down to Capitol Hill and somebody that has a $6,000 house and complaining that he has to pay $200 a year taxes, he's he yells, and so they go to so they don't tax him, and they tax the guy that only has one vote.
Right.
And so as long as those things there, you will have a situation that is that's very rough and unfair. It's hard. It's a hard thing, but this isn't anything new. I remember my father years ago. We had when I was a boy, we had an engineer here in the building, and he had been here and a good man. He was real good, and he had to get a license, and he kept going over. He couldn't get a license. Seemed like he couldn't get a license. So it wasn't any way to get it. So finally, this lawyer came around who was close to the mayor. Then in those days, the mayor, and it was a different kind of government. And he said, well, why not? He says he can help get a license. And sure, he can help get a license. Just as soon as they hired him, he got a license very quickly. I remember that was when Walton was mayor. He then Walton went on and got to be governor, and then he got impeached. But there's nothing new about it, and that's all. And right now, I think this ARG has got a good idea that they're putting up good men for the council. We have a very fine man as mayor, and Oklahoma City has a chance of coming out of it. And I believe that everybody's going to be fair. And all you want's a fair shake. You don't want anything unfair. We don't ask, and then I never mix in politics. Sometimes I fight them, but I don't mix in them.
Yeah.
But it hurts me. I just won't do it. I just won't go along on a lot of that stuff. Because, you can get this zone, where if you get so and so, you can get this zone or something. If the property should be zoned, it should be, and if it shouldn't, it shouldn't. And that's the only way. I'd rather go out there and fight to see if the right people are elected, who will be fair. And nobody knows what's fair, but a lot of people know what is. You know what's fair. Everybody knows what's fair, but the politicians always say, well, I know when Craig Smith, I was asking him about cutting some taxes here and taxing this property down here at the same basis as he did properties all around the rest of the city. Oh, he said I'd be defeated tomorrow if I did that. Well, he got defeated anyway. But they all recognize the situation, but you've got to have fairness in government to have a fair city. That's your basic thing, because if you don't have that, you haven't got anything.
Get too much of the other. It's too easy to go the other way.
That's right. That's right. But I see a great future for Oklahoma City. Can't stop it. And I remember years back, I hear, this company was leaving here, or this was going bad, and Oklahoma City was going to dogs, if this didn't happen, that didn't happen. That's just a lot of baloney, because 10 years from now, Oklahoma City will be bigger and better than it is today. And 20 years from now, it'll be bigger than it was then. And 100 years from now, it'll be bigger yet, and better.
Yeah.
So it's, as far as I can see, Oklahoma City's a cinch. Even, for instance, I say family's been in real estate here for a long time. And I've noticed that even the stuff that father or something bought years ago where they were wrong. In other words, you bought property out here northwest of town, I call that right, because it's worth 10, 20, 50 times what it used to be. But even when you bought the wrong property, the growth in the town is taking care of it. We own some property on Reno. Come out all right on that. Well, there isn't any part of town that's progressed less than Reno. But still, we've come out on it and made a profit. And got income, and you work them out. So I don't see, it's very difficult for anybody who has invested in real estate in Oklahoma City in the past 50 years to lose any money. There's a few people that bought some high-priced stuff here on Main Street, have temporarily taken a licking. And you take where Zales is down there, they paid approximately $250,000 for that property. That was part of where Woolworth was. Woolworth had a 75-foot building, and another part of the same building, identical right next door to it, Mike Monroney's wife just sold for $97,000. No, there's no difference between the two, and that is a pretty good indication of the drop in values. And but you can't rent any stuff on Main Street for half of what it used to rent for. It doesn't matter being a little drop. That's why a 10% cut in your taxes doesn't do you very much good. When your drop is about 50-60%, you can't. 10% doesn't mean very much.
You're still losing 40.
That's right. You just still out that difference, and there are other things that go with it. And then they want to know why they don't fix up all the buildings, and you fix them up, and still nobody rents them. It doesn't make any much difference. And the only thing that's saved downtown so far is Ms. Brown. If Ms. Brown, she just made new leases there. I bet if she had to do it over, she probably wouldn't. If Ms. Brown had moved out of there, it wouldn't have been anything left. See, Penny's was the last blow. And Brown is the only real store left downtown. I imagine the Browns do over half the business done downtown Oklahoma City today.
No, they'd have to.
I would say they do over half. There's a few stores that are doing all right downtown. Browns and Rothschild. They've got things people want. But I'm sure you that if Ms. Brown didn't have that investment there, she sure wouldn't make it today. She just got a big investment, and she goes along, and she's got to protect it. You just can't go off and leave it. But it's harder to do business there than it is at Penn Square.
Sure.
That's all there is to it. So if they're going to help the downtown and save it, they better sure hurry up, not take 10 years, because if they take 10 years to do it, there won't be any downtown left here, because it's going down very fast right now. So ever since the urban renewal stuff has come out, it's hurt that much more. The situation is worse today than I've ever seen it, because the old people won't fix up and the new people won't even look.
So it's static right now.
It's static and worse. And you take these, there isn't a bona fide tenant in that whole block down there. Not a tenant that would be there if they didn't have to. If they could get out of leases or something. Nobody down here that cares. You come along, now you take that Rosenfield Jewelry building burned down. Nothing would make Rosenfield Jewelry